The Bear and Cheryl Show. Book Corner anti-coronation video. So today is the awfulness that is King Charles's coronation, although he might pick another name. Queen Elizabeth kind of did. So in this very special Bear and Cheryl show, we are going to talk about the Queen. For me, she's not dead. For me, she will come back and reign supreme for all of us. I don't know when that's going to be. Maybe it's a supernatural thing, but she was my queen for my entire life, 55 years, and she was a good and just queen. She was the mother of all. She was the mother of Western civilization, and that is a very powerful thing. So as you can imagine, I'm not weathered this well. That vile woman is going to be in the Queen's chambers. Ew! Okay, well, of course, with a vile woman, I mean his somewhat illegitimate wife, Camilla, not, God bless her, Diana, who died so tragically. Who would have still been his wife had they not divorced, which, of course, the Queen was very against, as well, as you can imagine, just because of the situation in the monarchy, right? They should have thought about it more, but that's a story for another day. Still, that is why she will be there. Camilla is going to be queen. So happy to, because as you know, I'm a monarchist, being Canadian, Canada. And we in Canada probably love the monarchy more than the people in the UK. We consider ourselves English. Well, most of us do. And we consider ourselves to be very happy members of the Commonwealth. I'm not sure about other members, although there's like 92 countries apparently that are actually in the Commonwealth. So the last time I checked, I don't know, I'd have to check again. We are certainly one of the most proudest of them. So I want to honor the Queen on this day. Because I think, as I'm going to quote from Romeo and Juliet and the Bard, who is one of the greatest of all writers in the English language, William Shakespeare, from the end of Romeo and Juliet. I probably do remember it because I've taught this play so much, but I want to, yeah, what are you doing? Oh, hang on, it's being weird. There it is. Okay. The sun for sorrow will not show its head. Well, it's kind of raining here in BC where I am. I don't know where you are, because it's a sad day indeed. You know we're going to have him on our money? Ew! Because we have the Queen on our money, and it's beautiful. She's on all the coins. Her head is on all the coins. And then she is on different bills as well. I imagine they'll still keep them, but there'll be a time when there will never again be a bill with her name on it. How do we endure it? How do we endure it? So, Bear's okay. Bear is like, he's not that upset about it. He's really evolved. So he's like, come see, come saw kind of thing. He's like, it's still money. You can still use it. So I suppose I should take some wonderful counsel from my bear. But she was very, very important to me. Not having a mother, myself, really. Oh, I had a jailer, I had a captor, I had a torturer, I had an evil woman who did things. But I was essentially an orphan in lots of ways. So the Queen was like the good mother for all, right? So she was like my mother, in a way. Yeah. So, we're going to celebrate her today. So, I think, what are we going to do? Let's sing. What do you think? Should we sing God Save the Queen again? I think we did sing God Save the Queen. We used to sing it all the time in the you know, other eras. Well, let's just say in Canada there are people who like the Queen more than other people. So the people who are presently ruling are not fans of the Queen, but Her Majesty's royal opposition are fans of the Queen, of which I'm a fan of the Queen. So let's sing it, people. Okay, let's see. God save our gracious Queen, long live our noble Queen. God save the Queen. Send her victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the Queen. And it looks like he has. Because I think she's, wherever she is, ruling now. With Jesus by her side. So that's good news. So, anyway, you can tell I'm pretty, broken up about it. But anyway, so that's the plan. So we're going to look at a couple books. Boom! Young Queen Elizabeth. Now, this is not Queen Elizabeth II. This is Queen Elizabeth I. Right? Because that's where she took her name from. From what I remember, you can take a new name. And I think her name, she had, because they get a lot of names. So I think, but they actually can take another name. And she wanted to take, because there hasn't been very many queens, right? There's been Queen Victoria, which was a very powerful queen, where we get Victoria Day from. And the Queen's birthday celebration, which is in May, which is coming up, is actually the Queen's birthday. So we get a holiday. I think most people in the Commonwealth do on the Queen's birthday. It's called Victoria Day, although it's actually the sitting monarch's birthday. It's supposed to, speak about the sitting monarch's birthday. So, because we actually, of course, it's the Queen's birthday, so we get the day off because it's such an honorable, powerful, good day. But she actually named herself after the first Queen Elizabeth. So that's why she called herself her HRH, Her Royal Highness, Queen Elizabeth II. Because there was already Queen Elizabeth. So we're going to look at that book a little bit. And then, where did she come from? Because we always have parents, right? And she had her parents too. And so, boom, the Queen Mother. So this was Queen Elizabeth's mother, right? And of course, we had, back in the day when we were naming things after royalty, not other kinds of stuff, we had a highway called King George Highway in Surrey, where I lived a lot of my life. It's still there, except they don't call it a boulevard now instead of a highway. I'm not really sure. So it's now called King George Boulevard, because he was the sixth king, King George the Sixth. Not the sixth king, but I believe the sixth king named George, I think. That was her father. And it's a whole big story about how she ended up being queen in the first place. It was an unlikely story. But of course, his brother, Edward, was supposed to be king. He abdicated to marry this American, Wallis Simpson. So then he could not be king. So then the only other person that could be king was his brother, who was never prepared to be king. And some of his story is talked about in the movie The King's Speech by Colin Firth, who I love. Although he has a complex relationship with the monarchy. I think some people do. We usually don't in Canada. We just adore them and love them and, you know, honor them because that's what you do. That's the right and proper thing. That's what you do. So, anyway, that just to give you a bit of a backstory. And so that was Queen Elizabeth's mother. And so and now Queen Elizabeth's grandson, of course, William, will be king at some point, because of course Charles is quite aged right now himself, so he will not be king for a long time, but he will be king until he dies. And then it will be, because it goes in line of succession, and then it will be William, who's still quite young and strong and has a wonderful and extraordinary wife, Kate, and of course I believe they have 4 children now. And then I think it will be Prince George, which of course they named after, you know, the Queen's father, right? So there will be another King George, most likely, unless stuff happens, because it's the line of succession, right? I believe George is the first, and then there is Charlotte, I think, is the second, or maybe there's only 3 kids. No, I haven't keep track with it. I know Louis is one of them. I know King George will come at some point because he's William's son. And in case you're wondering, why wouldn't it be his brother? It's always the firstborn son, their heirs after that. So, yeah, unless everyone, of course, dies and he's still alive, then he would be. He would be. That's how her Queen Elizabeth's dad became king, because there wasn't anybody else to be king. So that's kind of where it is. So hopefully that won't happen. So, you know, so then there will be another King George, which was her father. Sorry, just wanted to give you guys background. So, bam, young Queen Elizabeth. So this was in like the 1500s, if I remember rightly. If I remember my English history. Yeah, it was September 7th, 1533. And here's an interesting thing. She was the daughter of King Henry VIII, who kept killing his wives because he couldn't divorce them. So back then, even though it wasn't okay, it was sort of okay because he was the king, but it was bad. Which is why he ended up changing the church and created the Church of England so he could divorce them. So now, apparently the Anglican Church is actually almost exactly like the Catholic Church, except you can divorce somewhat easily there, as you still can't, even in the Catholic Church. You can divorce, but it's not considered proper. But, you know, people do, obviously. So, this is the story here. We don't want to make this too long. The night sky glowed gold and red over London. Lights blazed from hundreds of bonfires throughout the city. Church bells rang out. There was dancing and feasting in almost every street in the English capital, and the joyous cry of "Long live Princess Elizabeth" echoed through the night. The celebration on September 7th, 1533, honored the birth of Princess Elizabeth, daughter of King Henry VIII and Queen Anne Boleyn, who was one of the queens. Okay, drink break. There were special reasons for this grand celebration. First of all, Elizabeth was a strong and healthy baby. There was certainly a reason for great joy. In those days, there was very little medical knowledge. Many babies died at birth, and only the strongest survived, which of course was true, because this is the 1500s, so there wasn't really any medical care. And, you know, if the baby couldn't basically survive on their own, they didn't. So, and she did. There was another cause for joy. Elizabeth was a truly English princess. King Henry already had a daughter, 17-year-old Mary. That was Mary, Queen of Scots. It's a whole big story. But Catherine, Mary's mother and King Henry's first wife, was Spanish. So that meant Mary was half English and half Spanish. So, for example, well, I won't even go into it. Just suffice it to say, there is a certain amount of people who, yeah, it's an issue. But don't worry, it's going to be okay. England and Spain were great rivals. The English people were afraid of being ruled by a half Spanish queen. Kind of like Mary Markle's situation. This is all I mean. But don't worry, it won't ever happen. Yes. If Mary became queen, would she be loyal to England or Spain? Would she make England a colony of Spain? Would she destroy centuries of English history? Yes. I think we still worry about that. Not about Spain, though. But back then, England was a much smaller country than it is now, in some senses. Like the British Empire did not actually exist in the way it does now. You know, the sort of the Dominion of England did not exist in such a way. But of course, the Commonwealth of England does now exist, which is good. But now there was an all-English princess. There could never be a doubt of her loyalty to her country and her people. And that's really all it is. King Henry had also longed for a truly English heir, but he did not join in the celebration on Elizabeth's birth. Okay, well, you know, King Henry VIII. Let's see. Oh, yes. Well, this is another very big, powerful point to make, and I'm going to make it. In fact, he was furious. His anger was felt through Windsor Castle. Henry had wanted a son, and his astrologers had promised him one. Astrology was studying the position of the stars and believed such positions influence events on Earth. The astrologers' predictions, though not scientific, were taken quite seriously by many people at the time, and Henry was no exception. The king raged at everyone in sight. He blamed his astrologers. He blamed his royal advisors. And he said they should have stopped him from divorcing Catherine and marrying Anne. Most of all, he blamed Anne for failing to give him the son he wanted. Of course, back then, no one understood that it was the men that decided if the child was a boy or a girl, and not the women. As in so many other cases, women were blamed again. But we all know, if I can get sciencey for just 1 second, that the men are the ones that have the Y chromosome. That is why a boy is a boy, right? Biologically speaking, that's kind of how that happens. So women have absolutely nothing to do with it. They couldn't have anything to do with it because they have 2 X's. So, but he was mad about it. Nobody could tell how King Henry would act from 1 minute to the next. First, he was furious about Elizabeth's birth. Then he arranged a magnificent christening ceremony and enjoyed every moment of it. He was a little bit, unhinged, if you can imagine. He was not all there. Then he exploded at fury at having to pay for the feast after he had the christening. These swift changes made the king's life in a castle very difficult for everyone, especially his family. So it was very lucky that Elizabeth did not see her father very often. The custom was to raise royal children apart from their parents. The royal nursery wasn't even in the same castle as the king and queen's. Right from birth, Elizabeth had her own large staff of servants. There was a lady governess who was in charge. There were yeomen, the young noblemen, who acted servants for the young princess. There were grooms to care for the horses in Elizabeth's stables. There were officers of the pantry who brought and prepared food for Elizabeth and her household. There were even 3 people whose job it was to rock the royal cradle. There were also 2 nurses. The choice of nurses were very important. In those days, it was believed that a baby would pick up all the faults as well as the good traits of the nurse. There was no work for a cross-eyed nurse or one with an odd voice. People believed the baby would catch cross-eye or an odd voice or another problem, that the nurse was suffering. Yeah, people thought things would be picked up that way. A royal nurse was watched every minute. Everything she ate or drank was carefully planned. People thought that what you ate shaped your temper and behavior, so the nurse had to eat things that would supposedly make her sweet and proper, and the baby in her care would grow up with these admired qualities. So that is a little bit of young Queen Elizabeth. And then let's have a look at this is more of a photo book, the Queen Mother. So, and this was her way back in 1995. She did die, but she was quite aged when she died. And this is the Queen's, can you see it? This is the Queen's grandfather. This is the Queen's father, sorry, and her mother, and that's who they are. Do you see? And she had a sister. So that was them when they were little. She had her sister named Margaret, and she, of course, was the Queen herself. So that was quite a lovely story. And so this was about Queen Elizabeth's mom. But I don't want to make this too long. So if you want to, you can certainly look it up yourself. So I would like to end with this. From a play I actually saw once. Rule Britannia, Britannia rule the waves. Royal Britons never, never shall be slaves. It was a song from the Commonwealth. And I think it's true. And I think it's good. And I think as we go into this new era, let us know. There are better days ahead for everybody. So, right? The Bear and Cheryl Show. Any Coronation Edition. And God save the Queen.